is Chase. Um, I'm a player in Highgrounds. I've been playing for quite a while. Well, not really quite a while, but quite a bit since the beta came out a few days ago. As you can see, I'm already at rank 50, and my total points is nearing 9 million, which I think puts me near the top compared to most players. Not entirely positive though. What I was going to do for this video here was go over the cards that are in the starter deck and then um, give people an idea of what I believe is the best deck setup that you can create with the free cards. Because I've noticed a lot of times when I play lower level players, they're using a lot of cards that are really just kind of useless and really don't go anywhere, or really don't achieve a means to an ends at all. Which I know is something that I did when I first started playing the game too. It's like, oh, I got another card. Let's jam this one in there. And at first it's kind of like, let's just see how many cards we can get, because you're not really thinking especially strategically. But really, one of the things that I found out through a lot of matches played, from the last screen, you could see it's about 320 matches that I've played. And one of the things I've definitely learned, and I've learned a lot, there's a lot to this game. It's fairly basic, but also really complicated. But one of the most important things that I've learned is that it's really necessary to trim down the deck size. This is because it allows you to create decks that are more predictable, and you'll be able to get cards on cue more often than the randomness that ensues once you start to get above about 18 or 20 cards or so. It starts to become a lot more just random and luck, as opposed to strategy. But anyways, here I'm gonna analyze some of these cards. As far as I'm aware, all of these cards here are the ones that you can get after you complete the quests and everything, all the ones that you can get for free. I may be off by one or two. If so, please let me know. And also, please rate the video and let me know, what you thought about it or what you would like to see. I am planning after this video on making a video actually over a battle and, just kind of giving you an introduction and showing you my thought process on why I do things and giving you some tips and stuff. But to start off here, we'll start with Groff. Groff is, for the most part, a useless character. I will not recommend him for this deck. He provides 2 defense or 1 attack. The 2 defense could be useful if you're going up against an opponent who really likes to wound a lot. But in general, really, Groff is not going to be used very much. He's just really not that useful. The 1 gold cost is nice because you can just turn around and sell him if you need to, but really just not all that useful. So we're going to take both of the Groffs out of this deck here, just because I really don't like him that much. Sorry, Groff. Katie is the next one here. Katie is a cost of 2 gold. Her defensive ability is +2 to recruit, while her offensive ability is +2 to attack. When you look at Katie, it's really hard actually not to compare her to Taram down here. I'm not really sure if I'm pronouncing any of these names right, by the way, so sorry if I'm not. But when you compare these two, Katie costs 2 gold, Taram costs 2 gold. Katie gives you +2 to recruit, Taram only gives you +1. Katie gives you +2 to attack, Taram gives you +3. In my opinion, though, I think you should always kind of be focused more offensively if you can be. And when you compare the two here, I think it's pretty clear that Taram and his superior attack power is a little bit better, which is why I'm going to get rid of Katie for this ultimate gold starter deck with the free cards. I just think Katie, compared to some of the other cards at 2 gold, it's just not really comparable, and she's not really all that useful, so I wouldn't recommend it. Next here, we're going to move on to Domino. Or actually, I'm sorry, Ram. Skipped Ram. Ram is similar to Taram, except actually superior in my opinion. Ram is a knight who costs 2 gold. His defensive ability is +1 to gold. His offensive ability is +3 to attack. I really like Ram as a character mostly because he's another low cost card that can begin producing gold for you really early on in the match. If you have a Ram paired up with say, 2 Hardens, then that gives you a really good chance right off the bat that your very first draw, or maybe even your second draw, um, if you happen to, just get some bad luck. But definitely by your second bad draw, you're going to have at least some card that is going to be producing gold, which is really important. The most important aspect of this game, in my opinion, is just being able to produce gold early and then just consistently throughout the entire match. And then plus Ram, he also has the +3 attack, so if you do need to move him into attack position, or if you already have a lot of gold producers on the back row and there just isn't room, he's got the attack power to where you can move him up front, and it's not just a waste. Ram also sells for 1 gold, as does Tarim. So if you ever need to upgrade, that's a possibility with those guys as well. But Ram, definitely one of my favorite starter cards that they have. Moving on to Domino, I'm not too high on Domino really. His defensive ability +1 to recruit, offensive ability +1 to wound. He costs 3 gold. Really, Domino just doesn't provide enough utility. All you can really use him for is to wound, and even then, he only wounds one character, which is usually really easily countered by the opponent just having one healer out. That's all that it takes. So I really don't recommend the Dominoes. I'm going to take those out of this deck here. Um, let's see. I only had one in there. I think actually you only start off with one of them. But if you did have two, I would have taken out the second one as well. Um, Moving on here to Aban. Aban costs 3 gold, and then he'll give you 1 gold and 1 recruit, or +2 to attack. Aban is okay. It's not a great card. He has a decent offensive ability, and then decent defensive abilities. So not anything great. I'll get to the end here before I decide if I'm going to keep one of those or not, because he's kind of one of those fringe characters. Um, Jonas here for 6 gold. He will either produce 4 gold with his defensive ability, or he will wound 1 with his offensive ability. For the free starter cards, I really like Jonas because mostly of his defensive ability, the fact that he can produce 4 gold for you, that'll really get you pumping out some units, and so I would highly recommend that. And then he does have the utility to where if you have plenty of gold, you can bring him to the front and wound somebody if you really need to. So I definitely like Jonas, and I'll keep him in the starter deck. Hector is another one of these kind of fringe characters here. Costs 4 gold, and he'll give you 3 recruit or 4 attack, which is decent. As far as the starter cards go, he's kind of in between as far as, he gives you the 4 attack, but he doesn't cost 10 gold like Oakley does, which really is kind of a ripoff. So Hector is kind of the happy medium there in that he deals a decent amount of damage, but he doesn't cost a ton of gold. Hector is another one of those fringe ones, though. I'll come back and I'll look at him and we'll see whether or not we keep him in there. Ideally, I would like to get this deck down to 16 cards, I think. Next, we look at Grom. Grom is a really good card, great card. 7 gold, and then just look at all the utility that it gives you. It'll give you 2 gold or 2 recruit, or 3 attack and 3 defense, which is great. I can't recommend having Grom in your deck enough. It's one of the best cards as far as how much it costs versus what he actually gives you. Moving on, Harden, which I've talked about earlier. Harden is probably the best resource producer card in the game. Besides, some of the crystal units are good too because they also cost 2 gold and produce 2 gold. But as far as that, if you can get a Harden on your very first turn and play him, ideally that's what you would like to do, and that'll really set you up well for the rest of the match. If you don't get Harden by your first turn, ideally you'd really like to get him by your second, just because of how efficient he is, how cheap he is, and he really kind of becomes the backbone of your economy. Moving on, we've got Rosie, which is the cheapest heals in the game. Only costs 1 gold. Can't recommend Rosie enough. If you need to, you can always play Rosie and then sell her if it's early game. I'll do that a lot because early game, a lot of times you don't need healers if the opponent isn't wounding you. Next is Braun. Braun's another really good one. Costs 5 gold, which maybe that's a little bit debatable, but he does provide you with a wound and 2 gold if he's on the back defensive row, or he'll provide you with 3 attack and 1 defense if he's on the front row. So I really like Braun, and I would definitely recommend having him in your deck. Oakley's the next one. Oakley is a good character within the confines of the starter cards. Once you've bought a pack or two, you'll see that Oakley really isn't that great, just because he costs 10 gold, which is massive for only causing 7 damage. Crystal has um, some superior cards that cost 10 gold, but actually do more damage than that. And then there's some starter cards that cost significantly less, but do, I believe, 6 damage. However, within the confines of the starter deck, I think it is a good idea to have 2 Oakleys, because oftentimes you're going to be going up against other teams that also have 2 Oakleys, and it's hard to match up with them if you don't have 2 of them in your deck. So I recommend keeping Oakley. Durant is a really great card here. Durant is kind of the better version of Domino. As you can see, Domino costs 3 gold, Durant costs 3 gold. But Durant is ultimately going to provide you with a lot more utility, especially with his offensive ability being a wound arrow that allows you to put him in the front attacking row and disable one of the opponent's back row, support units or resource producers, and they won't be able to do anything about it in the next turn. Say if you wound a guy who's making 2 gold for them, he's not going to make that gold at all, since Durant is on the front row, unless that person anticipated that and had a healer there. But I really love Durant. Um, and actually, I think if I'm right here, I think you actually only start off with 1 Durant, if I'm right. And so what we're actually going to do is we're going to take that one there and put him out. I can't remember for sure, but now that I'm thinking about it, I think you actually do only get 1 Durant with the starter cards. Um, and so that is actually going to take us down to 16 cards here. So this would definitely be the deck that I recommend.